Good morning, everyone. We're about to get started with our annual meeting for the year that's passed, 2021. Mr. Senior Warden, do we have a quorum here gathered?
We have a quorum.
Do we have a secretary?
We have a secretary.
Mr. Dinkins Grange, this is his last day as a vestry member, and we're making him work all the way to the end. Thank you, Dinkins. Our regular secretary is not here, so we'll let Dinkins take over because he's been a masterful secretary this time when he's had to step in. Let's begin with prayer. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Almighty and ever-living God, source of all wisdom and understanding, be present with those here today who take counsel in this, your church of all saints in the Diocese of the Diocese of Florida, for the renewal and mission of your church. Teach us in all things to seek first your honor and glory. Guide us to perceive what is right, and grant us both the courage to pursue it and the grace to accomplish it. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. All right, I'm going to begin with my annual State of the Parish report. I would prefer that no boos be called out, but clapping and cheers are, of course, encouraged. Or you can just enjoy your breakfast, and that'll be enough. One of the most oft-quoted comments heard in the church as well as throughout the country and the world since the pandemic began for us in the year of our Lord, do we call it that, 2020, is that no matter what we do, we will never return to what was normal in our lives before this pandemic. I guess in a lot of ways, that has certainly been the truth for us so far. Even in the few moments over the past year here at All Saints, when COVID numbers dropped in Duval County and we loosened things up a bit, we still have continued to follow pandemic-related changes to regular worship and ministry inside the church and on our campus. We have never stopped offering online live options every Sunday for worship. Right now, this meeting is being recorded so that we can put it up on our YouTube channel. And we've also offered online live services for special occasions like weddings and funerals. We've also continued to follow the pandemic-related changes made for receiving Holy Communion, encouraging mask and keeping safety at the forefront of worship inside the church to the best of our abilities. None of that was normal, as all of you remember, before March of 2020. But I'm very happy to be able to report today that over the last year, in the midst of all of those continued changes and alterations we've held on to, we have begun to find ways to get back to some very important events and occasions at All Saints that feel, again, like the way that we all loved and remembered and what we always need to be. Whether we like or miss what's normal, or whether you feel just as comfortable with all the change, and I know when we changed the services back from 10 to 10:30, some of you were loving the change a little bit. The return to some of All Saints' most regular programs in 2021 has certainly been well received by those returning to the church after the pandemic. And for me personally, I'll be honest, they have been the highlights for me over this past year. It all began with the return of our Holy Week services last spring, along with our wonderful Easter Sunday sunrise service and 2 joyful Easter Sunday Eucharists in order to make the service more available and less crowded. Even if we did use electric candles at the sunrise service and offer our first ever outdoor viewing option with a big screen sitting right outside there for the 2 Easter Sunday services, it felt once again like the beautiful music-filled Easter morning we all loved from years prior to the pandemic. And then later in the year, even after having to cancel our usual time in August, we got back to our rally day again, repackaged last year as our new fall festival for All Saints Sunday. Not only did the All Saints Fall Festival include the return of the men's famous chicken burn lunch and all the fun activities for kids, But our All Saints Sunday Eucharist also brought back the sound of the Blue Muse Jazz Band with some of the most uplifting music that we had in the season. That was all healing balm for your priest's sin-sick soul. And I know that many of you felt the same way. And I'm happy to report that the Blues Jazz Band will be back with us in just 2 weeks on the last Sunday of the season of Epiphany, just before Ash Wednesday. All Saints also returned to the right kind of normal with our first confirmation class we've had in 2 years. That class ended with the confirmation of 8 youth, and it brought 11 adults into our church and closer to Jesus through confirmation being received and by reaffirming their Christian faith. Several of those newly confirmed and received adults, and at least one of the youth and their family, are some of our newest parishioners now at All Saints. They found All Saints and started attending worship with us during the season of the pandemic. And I have to tell you, bringing new people into the church and helping them get closer to their Lord and Savior is by far the most important normal for any church. And I could not be more thankful or proud for this parish holding on to the spirit of evangelism throughout what was yet another challenging year. Thanks be to God for that, for all of us. Of course, as we all know, it was also part of the church's normal, whether we are in a season of pandemic or not, to tend to the sick, to mourn with and support families who have lost loved ones, and to bury the dead. The year that has just passed certainly brought that normal back to All Saints with a vengeance. But all the tough emotional work that calling requires of a church has never once made us falter or lose our hope here. In fact, during some of the hardest moments of this past year, this church and all its members, I believe, have shined and given glory to God. Our Daughters of the King were at the front door welcoming in visitors. Our Flower Guild gathered lilies and roses, as well as some beautiful native plants out of our new flower garden, and they decorated our sanctuary. Our choirs and music programs filled up the church with hymns and songs and music. And our altar guild ensured that the Lord's table was always set and that the candles were always filled with oil and lit. And there's never once been a lack of calls or texts or emails asking me if someone who was sick or a family who had lost a loved one might need one of our prayer quilts delivered, or a meal dropped off, or a phone call or card sent out to let someone know they are loved, supported, and prayed for by this church. That's the important normal life of Christ Church. The pandemic has and will never, I believe, put a damper on that work here at All Saints. I will finish by saying to you, as I always do every year, thank you to what I think is the best church staff I've ever had the privilege of working at over the course of I've been in several churches over the last 15 years, but the church staff we have is phenomenal. I could do next to nothing if I did not have Hillary Citrano, who actually arrived this morning while my wife is still in Ireland, to make sure that my daughter was taken care of and I could do the work that I have to do on Sunday morning. Thank you, Hillary. Of course, the amazing work that our choir director and organist puts together, Michael Mastronicola, that's kept music flowing in this church. Never once have we not had music throughout the pandemic. And this is a denomination where there are still a few churches that still have no music. So thanks be to God, Michael's been willing to work. Molly Pina, who came in today, not only to worship, but also to work. Where are you, Molly? Look, there's Molly. Molly has been an amazing assistant in the church. I don't even want to call her secretary or administrator. She's pretty much runs our office, and she's also assisting with finances and doing just about anything we ask her to do. And Molly's a phenomenal part of our church family, and we're lucky to have her. And just because I know they won't enjoy being clapped for individually, but let's just say that I'd never be able to get through any of our financial issues at the church if I did not have Elizabeth and Pat Dussinger working together. And last but not least, we have amazing clergy. What a gift and a blessing it's been to get a new curate, and to get a curate who fits in like she's been with us forever, and that is Mother Sarah Minton. Sarah, where are you? There's Sarah. And we still have Deacon Mark, who is with us. He's off with the bishop today, as he often tends to be, but he still counts this place as his home. Mark's had a rough year, but Mark has faith, and he has determination, and man, what a blessing we have to have him as our deacon here also. And finally, I would be called down by a good majority of this church if I did not mention the man who is behind the curtain, hidden over here in the kitchen somewhere, and that is Mr. L.C. West, who's a part of this family. Please pray for LC. The Seafood Fest always brings great stress to that man. And he can only take so much before he just explodes. And we've all seen him nearly explode at Seafood Fest Pass. So wherever he is, pray for him that he can hold it together. And he's got a good team to work with. Each one of these people has had their own unending struggles this past year to make the right decisions and to keep ministries functioning and growing. Each one of them have had to constantly adapt to changes while trying to hold on to some of the normality so many people have come to love and long for in this church. To have come through the roller coaster ride that was 2021 and to still be accomplishing all they have accomplished is worth one more round of applause, and so much more than that. So please. I just want to finish up by saying that as we move through 2022, may the prayer of St. Paul, which he offered to the church in Rome, be our promise and blessing as we move forward as the family of God here at All Saints. May the God who gives endurance and encouragement give us the same attitude of mind toward each other that Christ Jesus had, so that with one mind and one voice we may glorify the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. And may the God of hope fill us with all joy and peace as we trust in him, so that we may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. Thank you. The next person I'd like to invite up is Pat Dussinger, our treasurer here at All Saints.
The one thing Donovan neglected to mention was how incredibly blessed we all are to have one of the best rectors, if not the best rector in the entire church. All right, we're going to talk about numbers in depth. It's going to be very exciting. Now, listen, so the last year and a half, I think, has made some really unique challenges from a financial perspective, obviously. And I think the hardest of all those is the fact that it's really tough to have what I would consider a normal budget. You know, because if you think you're going to get this much revenue and then something with the pandemic happens, it dips or spikes, or if you think you're going to have a certain amount of expense when you don't, or you do anyway, those are all really tough, right? So it's been hard for us to have kind of a formal budget these last couple of years. So what I'll talk about today really is more progress against the prior year and how we're thinking about reopening and getting back to normal. This year we will have a formal budget. Whether or not we're able to, knock on wood and God willing, hopefully the pandemic stuff starts to ease. But we will have a more normal budget this year. But the first thing I want to tell everybody is, in the spirit of full transparency, on that green billboard back there, you see a balance sheet and an income statement for this year. So if you're interested in these kind of things, and you really want to dive into those numbers, and you find that enjoyable, please help yourself. If you don't, I won't hold it against you. Or if you want somebody to translate it, I'd be happy to do that as well. The one thing I'll tell you is we run the church on what's called an accrual basis of accounting, and for being audited purposes, but we actually run it day to day on what's called a cash basis. So there's a little bit of change in how you convert those. If you don't understand that, then you are very lucky not to have been cursed with the accounting genie. and I'll leave it at that. But I'll start with this. So last year, we were able to collect $510,000 of pledge revenue, which is the highest it's been since I've been treasurer since 2009. So phenomenal progress. That was a little bit over $40,000 more than it was in 2020. So we actually grew year over year, which is fantastic. And frankly, this year we've had pledges of right around $500,000 again. We've gotten to this pattern about collecting pledge revenue, which is somewhat normal, I think, because sometimes people give money that's not pledged. So hopefully we can, at this time next year, I'll be reporting we're up around 550 or even higher that we've actually collected by the end of the year. But we'll see how things play out. I think that was the first theme of the year, is out collecting. The second was, obviously, we have a phenomenal addition in Mother Sarah. And so, so glad to have her here. And as we look at this, I think, as the bishop came to us and said, we'd really like to have her in your parish, we said, so would we. But, it's a little bit of a challenge with finances, right? And so we went back and we said, we've got some money we've set aside to pay down our debt. So how about, instead of having to go back to folks and donors again, what if we just take every dollar that we pay her in expense or salary and take that off the debt? And they agreed. And so we get a double blessing from Mother Sarah. Every day and hour she's here, we pay down our debt and we get the benefit of having her with us, which is phenomenal. So as of the end of the year, our $175,000 debt to the diocese is actually down to about $135,000, and it continues to tick down every day. So good stuff there as well. The third thing is we had a lot of big one-time gifts last year, which is not something you would expect necessarily in a pandemic year, but above and beyond the $510,000 we collected in normal pledge revenue, we had about another $334,000 in one-time gifts. So phenomenal thing, and we're really blessed to continue to have that kind of support throughout the parish. So all these things aside, the other highlights I want to make sure I share with you all is we were able again for the fourth year in a row to pay our full pledge to the diocese. Again, I haven't seen the numbers, maybe Donovan knows, but I have to imagine we're one of a handful of churches who are able to do that in the midst of a pandemic, so we should all be very proud of that. And then the other thing is we continue to be incredibly blessed with an army of volunteers. So we have a volunteer bookkeeper, we have a volunteer sexton, all of those things we pay $0 for. And normal churches do have to pay for that, right? Or most churches do. So, all the good news is tempered just a bit by that, but I think in general, I would tell you the church is in a very, very strong financial position today. So what I want to end with here, and give you a little bit of an update on, we had a challenge this year with respect to the pledge drive to see what we could get in terms of more money to pay off the debt. So we ended up with 131 pledges and right at $500,000 of pledge revenue, which means we earned $100,000 more to pay off the debt. So phenomenal progress there. So if we're down to 135, we can take another 100 off that. As we stand here today, we're basically about $35,000 left of $175,000 of debt. Amazing. And I really want to thank everybody. I can't tell you how many folks came up to me and said, well, can I split my pledge into 3 parts? Or can I get my dog to pledge? Or, there's some really creative stuff. It never ceases to amaze me how creative people are. But at any rate, couldn't count the dog pledges, would like to. Hank would have pledged to. But the other piece I want to tell you is we're still open. So if anybody hasn't pledged, right, and those numbers go up, when we get to 140 pledges, it would be we're basically earning an extra $25,000. So if you have not yet pledged and you're still interested in doing it, we're 9 away from $25,000 more to pay off the debt. Okay. Wow. So that said, and then by that point we're down to about $10,000 in debt. So we're really making some nice progress here toward the debt. It's all good stuff. So that's all I have. Appreciate everybody's support. And again, if you have any questions, please, this is not a mystery. I'm happy to sit down and go over all of this as in-depth as anybody wants to. Or not. So your call if the Canons entertaining or not. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pat. Just so you know, Pat, I'm going to look in the Canons and Constitution of the Episcopal Church. I don't think it says you can have dogs to fill out pledge cards. I mean, I think it's probably a good possibility we can do that. I don't know if I have an stated, can I see yours real quick? We not put this in here? Okay, never mind. I'm going to invite, before we have our senior warden come up, just to break it up a little bit, I'm going to have Mother Sarah come up and say a few words. We don't have our curate report listed, and that's because we reproduce these on a regular annual basis, and we just forgot to put it in. So, Sarah, come on up, and this gives you your freedom to say anything you want, or very little, or whatever. So.
When you're not on the agenda, I could go on and on and on. Huh? I'm not going to though, because I wasn't on the agenda, and I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for welcoming into All Saints. I'm so, it's just such a privilege to be here to lead you in worship, to pray with you, to pray for you. It's been just an honor. What was one of the happiest days of my life happened in October with all of you here when God made me a priest. You prayed me through losing my dad and my sister-in-laws, and I'm really, really grateful. And I'm looking forward to Sunday school and teaching Sunday school, and we want to get the youth acolytes back, and I'm kind of want to lead the charge on that. And I'm looking forward to really good, fun things to come. So thank you, thank you.
Next one on the item of agenda is the senior warden's report. So, senior warden, come on up. Let's give a hand of applause for these choristers walking through here. Not for Rick, but more good work being done today at All Saints. And now for you, sir.
All right, so I have a report, and I won't re-go over that. But I did want to talk briefly about how your vestry made decisions this year. One thing I would like to note is, by the time this year calendar started, we were reopened as a church, and despite 2 surges, we never closed down again. And our process was twofold. One is we wanted to be as open as possible because we believed that during the pandemic, one of the things we needed most, both as a parish and as a community, is God. And we wanted to be as available as possible. A lot of the ideas were created last year with the streaming. We kept going. And our approach was very much an Episcopal approach, the via media, the middle way. And so when things would happen, we would see upticks in numbers or numbers would come down. Our approach was to recognize that there were some people who thought we should be more open and some people who thought we were too open. And so we had to kind of figure out, okay, what can we do to be as available as possible while everybody still feels safe. And taking a middle road in our society today is not that easy. And so we did, though, and so frequently what as senior warden I was doing was assisting your rector, and we were trying to find what can we do. I'll give you an example. We had this Delta variant surge in the summer. The vaccine had come in spring, and while it became clear that a lot of people weren't interested in taking the vaccine, it was available to anybody, and so we were really much more open. And our approach was, if you want the vaccine, you had the chance to get it, so you should feel safe. And if you don't want the vaccine, that's fine. You have the opportunity to get it. So everyone should be able to come in. But the variant came, the Delta variant, and the numbers went real high again. And so we had to make a decision whether to cancel Rally Day or postpone it, because that had been the goalpost for a long time. It's like by Rally Day we want to return to normal. And that's right when the Delta variant had surged. So we postponed it. We just backed it up. We still had it. We had it in October. It was a little different, but we had a big old chicken burn the day before. It was pouring rain, but it was a great event. So that's sort of the approach your vestry has used this whole year, is like, let's do what is best for our community in terms of safety, but also being available to them and letting people worship. The other thing that I want to talk about is, and this is really a reflection of how strong your church is and how lucky we are to have this guy as our rector. Because he is truly centered on Christ, and that's what draws people in. And he understands that very simple concept that, frankly, some of the churches don't. And so we're very, very lucky to have that. And we had the biggest stewardship drive that we've had as long as he's been here, and really approaching the biggest we've ever had. And particularly in the terms of numbers, our budgets are what it was like back in 2000. And so it's been an extremely strong year. And even though your rector is not going to admit this, I think a lot of the credit goes to something that's going to go down in All Saints lore as the Christmas song speech made by your truly right here. And only the 8 o'clockers got it, but it was great, and I'm taking credit for it.
Just don't repeat it. I'll let you have another time to say it.
But seriously, the church is truly in as good a place as we have ever been. We are coming out of this pandemic stronger than we were when we went in, which is hard to believe, but it's true.
Thank you, Rick. The next report comes from our junior warden, Paul Moore.
I'm the junior warden, Paul Moore, and it's basically my job to take care of the building and grounds of the church. Last year we didn't get a lot done because of lack of funding and COVID, so a lot of things were piled up. So I've identified three major and very expensive projects that we need to complete this year. First one's the roof. The roof was installed when the church was built in 1965, so it's lasted, I think, it comes out to 65 years, or almost 63. That's a pretty good lifetime for a roof, but it's beginning to get leaks, and it needs to be completely not replaced, but they take refurbishing. That's an expensive proposition. I think the low end is going to be $22,000 and perhaps as much as $30,000. It's a 3-month job. So we're going to be doing that. That's the first priority because we can't have the church leak. The second is the bell tower. You know, the bell tower collapsed last year. We didn't have the funds to replace it, and we needed to look and see if we wanted to replace it according to pretty much the way it was, or to have a completely new mold drawing and pattern. I think we've decided we're going to replace it the way it is, but with enhancements, different type of wood, protections for the wood to prevent rotting. And most of the people we've talked to say that that will be a better way to go. Also, we need to actually look at it occasionally. That was installed in 2006, and we just left it there till it rotted. But the cost of that's going to be about $29,000 if we replace it according to the previous design. If we decide to get new drawings and a new design, it's going to be quite a bit more. The last thing we need to do is the solar shield for the stained glass window, or the chancel windows, not really stained glass. But that's the glass plate outside the church that protects the window from the elements. And if you take a look at it, it's cracking and needs to be replaced. We've got a group, the Strategic Planning Committee is working on a solution to that. We hope to have something this year to replace. Other than that, volunteers, we've had a lot of volunteers this year to help keep the building and grounds up. especially LC, of course. Couldn't get along at all without LC. Robert Beach, who's helped a lot with those kind of things. Toasty Hardy and the Flower Guild. Debbie Keller, who's maintained the columbarium. And then Bobby Spinelli and the Boy Scouts, who were there at every work party. And just a tremendous job. And that's anybody have any questions about B&G?
Thank you, Paul. I really appreciate the good work of the junior warden. And actually, Paul's wife, Paula, kicked off my time as your rector as a junior warden. And so I figured I'd get 2 for 1 if I had Paul as my junior warden. So thank you both, but thank you, Paul, for the good work you do. The next report comes from Mike Edwards. Mike is the chair of the Care Center Board. We have several members of the parish that are on that board, and I'm thankful to have Mike here with us this morning to come and talk to us a little bit about the other half of our property, which is the All Saints Early Learning Center and Community Care Center. Come on up, Mike.
Good morning. Good morning. I'll try to be brief, but I have so much information to share with you. You know, we forget, and most of you don't know, that our budget behind you is over $1 million a year. $1 million a year. That's what we're working with, because at this point, we've been blessed to have 121 children with us. We actually have 10 adults back there. Remember, that's the wonderful thing about your All Saints Early Learning and Community Care Center, is that we, a long time ago, started having adults with us to share experiences with the children, and then we became respites for family members, especially individuals who are veterans, to come stay with us to give the family members a respite from taking care of their family member 24/7. And so, you know, that's what we're about. And we forget that, yes, we're right back here, but, you know, you're welcome to drive around. You can't go anymore. I used to say, go knock on the door and tell Marion Welcher, that wonderful director, that you just want to see what's going on. Well, you can't do that anymore because of COVID. And I'm going to speak to that in just a minute. But if you drive around and you want to see the children smile in the playground, then you know what we're all about. But don't stay too long, because we have security cameras and they might think that you're doing something wrong. But the neat thing about our organization is, when the pandemic started, we heeded the actual request of the governor, who said, please stay open. We've got first responders, the children have children, and they need someplace to go. And they can't go to hospitals if you close. And so we did everything we could do to stay open. We did have to close for about 2 weeks at one point, because we had so many positives in the care center. But we did do that, but recently, unfortunately, in the last year, we've had to kind of rotate closings. We've had positives, we've had sick children, and so we've had to close various classrooms with a lot of angst and trepidations, etc. We meet, the board meet once a month, except in December, but we've had to have many emergency meetings to say, well, what do we do in this situation, in this instance, because of the outbreak and positives and etc. I probably know more about the CDC regulations and the Florida Health Code than I ever wanted to know. And so we've had to try to mesh those together and work with parents and etc. But I have to give you this one example, which is important to me, and I think about it every time I go toward the church to go to these monthly meetings. Because frankly, I don't want to look at numbers, and I don't want to look at the budget. But we're a nonprofit group. We're up and down with that. We stay as close as we can, and with the grace of God, we have occasional donations that help us through. The government, with the Payroll Protection Plan, PPP, we did get that money and were able to use that money in our downtimes. Our numbers were down at some point. Our actual caregivers were down because of them being sick. I'm not talking about people that test positive. I'm telling you, we had sick people. And so we had to close certain places, certain rooms, and clean them and scour and pay for that. And that came out of our budget. But we made it through. And what I want to tell you is, I want to give you this example. We had a family that decided they didn't like us following the rules of masks and dropping off children at the front door and parents not coming in. That parent wrote a long letter to the board. She asked to appear before the board. We listened to her concerns. We used her concerns in making our decisions, but she decided to take her child out of our care center. She was gone 2.5 weeks. She brought her child back and says, there's no better place than All Saints. I'll put up with your rules. She's written another letter, but we're still going to put up with our rules. You see, what we're really all about is important to us is we're following the rules, we're doing everything we can. But the bottom line is we have to keep our children safe. The children safe. And we're doing everything that we can to keep them safe. We have maintained a high quality during the pandemic. In fact, we're one of few guiding stars of Duval County. That's GSOD, is the Quality Rating Improvement System for caregivers in Duval County, and is also sponsored by the Early Learning Coalition. We have the highest rating of any care center in this county from that organization. That's who we are. But of course, our costs are going up like everyone else, and we're monitoring that. That's why, frankly, I hate to go to the meetings and look at our budget. We're 30,000 short here, or 15 short there, or wherever. But we're so lucky that just sometimes out of the blue, and I truly believe that God sent, that we get a donation, sometimes anonymously, sometimes not. And we don't ask for it. We haven't said we're short this amount of money, but it kind of just shows up. And we have been lucky enough to sponsor 10 families at Christmas and Thanksgiving during these critical times. The children are involved in church, Vacation Bible School, and of course we had our Touchdown Club, which we've slowed down with, that provided some scholarships. We're applying now for membership in it's an accreditation through the Florida Association of Child Care Management. It's called APPLE, it's an acronym, and we believe that we'll be accepted there because of what I've just explained. But what I'm excited most about, I've been around a while as the president of the board. I tried to retire 2 or 3 times. I actually got everyone to vote in a vice president in case I wasn't around. But we have members of our church who have joined us and who are asking great questions, like Betty Stoddard, who's joining Eleanor Colson, who joins me, and Bruce Hinchcliffe, and Lisa Alexander already on the board. You know, we have a time period that's supposed to serve and you can go. Well, I won't let anybody leave. If you want to leave, you got to move away. You got to just decide you don't want to be on the board, because I'm excited with this group, because this group asks questions. They even vote against me sometimes and do things that I don't want to do. So what I want you to do is be proud of what we have back behind you that we don't think about. When you leave the church, you usually drive around there. You see, what is this? What's going on? On Sundays, it's an empty building. But try driving once again. Come through during the week. It is okay. And you can see those smiling faces, and you'll know why I continue to want to be part of the board and silently go about the business of educating, protecting children, which is all of our jobs, in my opinion, as adults. Thank you.
Thank you. And next, Gary Bragg. Gary served along with Rick Alexander and Diane Scarborough as the deputation from All Saints for this year's diocesan convention. And Gary is going to come up and give you a quick overview of how that diocesan convention came about.
I knew the word quick before you started into that. I would say that while it was the 179th annual convention, it was my first. And I don't believe anyone there had been to the first one either. From our church, on the clergy side, we had Marvin, Sarah, and Mark. And on the lay side, we had Rick, Diane, and myself. Meeting started early that morning, around 8:30, and ran for the single day. This is something that Camp Weed that used to go for at least a day or two, I understand. But I guess because of COVID, among other reasons, it gets down. Important elections for the coming couple of years included the Diocesan Council, Disciplinary Board, Swanee Board of Directors, and a standing committee that was bringing in a newly elected Reverend Sarah Mick to be a part of that. Congratulations. Both Molly and Rick had offered their services as well. The board also recognized and made a resolution for establishing an annual commemoration for Father Fred Yerkes. I don't know if that means is familiar to many of you up here, but he's a legend in our diocese. And down the river, so to speak, every other church of ours has been graced by his presence, probably his foundation. So that was a pretty important thing. We had the Bishop Cross Awards, so I thought I could spend maybe a few minutes going back over the biography of each of them. It shouldn't take more than an hour and a half. But I will tell you that there's actually a film that denotes each of these people. Two of them were clergy, the Reverend Deacon Jeannie Bayer and Canon Len Horn, and then we have some lay people, Ronnie Kelly, Gilbert Pomar, Laureate Scott, Robert White, Hank Wilson, and Ray Phillips. I think that maybe the most important factor that's occurring is something that is a part of this convention, but part within the diocese as well, and that's the election of a new bishop. And most of you should be at least aware that this event is in process currently. Over the last few months, there was first town hall meetings, including one at St. Mark and one at the Cathedral. I attended both personally. And there were Zoom meetings that were open to people throughout our diocese as well. And I think there was 8 or 10 of those. I sat in on 3 of those. I don't know how many of any of you, other than Toasty and Marvin, were able to play a part in that, but it was really an impressive process. We first took an inventory of our diocese and considered what we thought we did best. We looked at the diocese and thought about what we could do better. Thirdly, we then described the characteristics that we wanted to find in the new bishop. And lastly, we set a process for designating who that bishop might be. At this point in the process, there is a selection committee that is literally interviewing prospective bishops. And at the conclusion of that, a recommendation will be made for a slate of candidates for the election itself, which will be in May. And I believe both Rick and I are on that election committee, and we will be then voting for the bishop to come. And that's a pretty important thing, obviously, for a lot of years to come. Beyond that, there are some videos and reports in print that the rest of you could look into if you had an interest. It's an interesting situation. It seems like it's far removed from our own parish, but maybe there's always a time that we could even do a bigger and better job for the diocese as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Gary. Thanks for giving us the info. The biggest story of all for the diocese will be the election of our new bishop. And as Gary said, that the new slate should be coming out the first week of March, or the slate, not the first slate, the slate. And then the election will take place at the cathedral on the 14th, thank you, Teresa, the 14th of May. And the installation of the new bishop of Florida will be in October. And we'll obviously be keeping you all up to date on that, get you information for where to go to see the slate. There'll be a walk, as they call it, a walkabout, or they don't call it that anymore, do they?
A meet and greet.
A meet and greet, yes.
The first week of May.
The first week of May, and that will open up this slate for it to be met by everybody in the diocese. And again, as Gary pointed out, your elected deputation will be those who cast the vote. So that is Rick Alexander, Gary Bragg, and Diane Scarborough. But of course, they will take your interest and questions and your suggestions for that vote as well as your clergy will be voting. So there's a clergy and a lay voting set up, and the new bishop has to win both of those to be our new bishop of Florida. All right. We've got one other big piece that I'm going to just hold off on because I don't want to miss the opportunity to do what is my favorite part of these annual meetings, which is to give away this year's John Riley Service Award. We started giving these out back in 2016 for the year 2015, and so that means we've been doing this for 6 years now, and I'm thrilled to be able to honor so many good people who have given so much of their time and talent to work here at All Saints and to serve. And we have, this year we're going to break the rules. What was it? Was it just, when was it, Rick Johnston? We gave you and Renee an award as 2 years ago, I think, as our John Riley Service Award. Well, this year we're giving 2 awards to 4 people, 2 couples, because there's just no way to give one or the other a single award. So this year, the John Riley Service Award goes to the Hinchless, to Bruce, and to Mary Ethel. Come on up, you two. I don't think I need to tell you all the hard work that this couple have done for All Saints. Bruce was one of my senior wardens. Bruce is involved in outreach. Mary Ethel runs, with good help, the Altar Guild and has done a tremendous amount of work for this church. She just organized a great trip to see an artist from in town that she knew personally. And all the hard work that they've done, far beyond I ever came here, I'm sure, gives them the right to receive a special award, and we give that to you both. You guys can stay up here, because the next couple will make you all shake your head and say, yeah, that makes total sense too. And that is the next John Riley Award for 2021 goes to Marvin and Toasty Harding. Again, no need for me to tell you all the important and good work that Marvin and Toasty have done. Toasty started the Flower Guild not long after I got here, and she was doing hard work for the parish long before that, and helping out with all the events that involve anything that requires beautiful decorations and the gathering in this place to make it feel like home. I mean, Toasty helped to design the way the friendship room, is that what we call that? No, what do we call that front room? The friendship room, as well as in the CEB, all kinds of tremendous work, and she absolutely deserves this. And this guy right here, Marvin, had to serve on my vestry under the leadership of Gary Bragg as senior warden, who drug him up on the aforementioned bell tower to paint it. So he deserves an award for nothing else for that work. And Gary, yours is coming later on someday. But Marvin has done tremendous work, and you just can't not have these two together. Marvin has done so much important work. He's a prayer warrior. He's a servant for this church, and these 4 individuals have deserved this award from the moment that we established it. So let's give them a big round of applause. The picture man is back there, so we have to get your pictures up on the wall. So He'll organize that for you. All right, one last thing to do this year, and I'm going to call Rick Alexander back up, not to tell you his Christmas Carol story, because we don't have enough time. I figure on the day we have an annual meeting, we start church at 10:30, a little bit later, people will understand, but I think we can still get through and get pretty close on time. With Rick, it's always a scary thought about it, but I think we can do it. We're about to, what I'd like to do is turn this over to Rick. He has a resolution to pass to change our bylaws at All Saints. That's one of those rare occasions at an annual meeting where we actually need a vote to be given by this parish. And I'm going to let Rick explain what we're planning on doing for the good of your vestry and your rector.
I have to say, there's nothing Donovan hates more than handing me the mic. But I will keep this brief because we're running out of time. So, predating Donovan, we had the canon to the ordinary, Bob Brippus, told us that it was, when he was looking at us, we were going through a rector change, looking for a priest in charge, that our vestry was off the bid. We did not need 12 people. And over the course of the years, we really are struggling to get enough people to volunteer to be on the vestry. And so we're going to change the bylaws. The bylaws currently have one phrase, and I think we can change it pretty easily, and that will allow us to have less than 12. We're thinking 9. That way we have 3 new people and a 3-year term. But we'll just take out the requirement. These bylaws have been changed. This is the 10th version, so we can change them when we get a new rector, but the way things have worked with this rector, it's just, this is, I think it's formality. So, it also, I'm going to propose changing Article 5, Section 1 of the bylaws, where it talks about vestry selection and election procedures. One thing that is clearly inaccurate in the bylaws is it talks about a November parish meeting. That came up, and I think we've actually changed this.
So it's really the 11th.
Right, it has to be by diocesan rules. It has to come right after the annual diocesan convention, which we went to 2 weeks ago. So that's got to come out of this language. And then there's one phrase where it says vacancies shall be filled first, then the 4-member freshman class shall be elected. What I'm going to propose is we just take out 4-member, and it will read, then the freshman class shall be selected, all from the same pool of eligible recommended individuals. I think it's the only change we need to make, and that way we can adjust as we need. For Dinkins, I've got this, and I can give this to you, and you can fill this out later. But I'm going to propose that we take out the words November and 4-member from Article 5, Section 1 of the bylaws. Do I have a second? Do we have any discussion? Questions?
Move the question.
Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. So now I'll turn it back over to Donovan, who is going to do the, it is encoded in the bylaws, and we take a name out of a hat, so.
That is in our bylaws. Thank you for that. This will make it easier, and it'll make a swifter, smoother vestry election, as well as time together making our decisions. I thought I'd bring out something that is up for the auction. There you go. Have a look at this thing. It's going to be up for there's a whole set of them over there at the Seafood Fest coming up next week, and we're going to use this instead of a basket or a hat to place in the name of 3 people who have chosen to be up for on the vestry. We're going to elect 2 today. We're going to draw out 2 names. That'll bring our vestry total to 9, and we're going to smooth into this 3 folks every year for a 3-year term. I'm very appreciative of these folks. One of them has served on the vestry in the past here at All Saints. That is Robert Beach. Thank you, good sir, for putting your name in the hat. We have Ashlyn Curran, who's been involved with the Moms Group, and also is very important to my wife, which has nothing to do with why she's going into the hat for the vestry. But her husband Rob has served, and it's her turn now. And then finally, we have one of our newer members, Dan Dever, has come to the parish with his wife Julie, and Dan has a lot of what I believe will be great work and experience to help with us in our vestry. So I'm going to fold these names up, drop them in, and then I'm going to ask Pat, come over here and hold this thing up, shake it up. Yeah, remember, we don't elect, we draw that way. We just blame it on the Lord if we don't. And I will say that because we only have 3 names in the hat with only 2 people to be chosen, the third person will be an alternate, assuming that we lose a vestry member, and they'll be our first call to come and serve. So, Pat, pull one of those names out. Dan Dever. Dan, welcome. Thank you, sir. Ashland. All right. Thank you. Mr. Beach, don't change your phone number. Don't just keep it up, because we may have to call you in. Those are our new members of the vestry for a 3-year term. If anybody's wondering why we're not electing deputation, it's because as we were going through the bylaws of All Saints, we discovered for all the time I've been here, we should have been electing people for a 2-year term as deputation for convention. So luckily I said that to Rick and to Gary and to Diane, and they agreed to serve for 2 years. So we'll elect a new set of deputation next year. So would you all please stand? And we are going to hold on to the tradition here of closing out another annual meeting with the anthem of our parish, which is "We Are All Saints," with the led by the writer of that wonderful tune and last year's winner of the John Riley Service Award, Morgan Wilshire. Morgan, will you lead us in this wonderful song? The words are on page 2. grace to church. Thanks be to God.